Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, everywhere in the world. We're very excited to have you here for this webinar, How to Go Headless with a Modern Web Storefront. My name is Daniel Solis, Product Manager at Coremedia. And today we have as part of our webinar series, our friends from Mobify, who will talk about this interesting topic that will help us going deeper into the world of commerce on a headless environment. My name is Daniel Solis, as I said, and I would like to introduce you to directly from the US, Mobify's Director of Marketing, Carly Sir, and also from the UK, Mobify's Solution Architect, James Sample. How are you guys?
Thanks, Daniel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Before starting, I just wanted to let you know that by the end of the session, we will be having some time for questions. So feel free to write it down on the box in the side, on the box of questions on the side of your screen. And also a reminder, this session will be recorded and will be available for you after the sessions. So Carly, James, the stage is yours.
Perfect. I will just start sharing my screen. Just want to confirm that you guys can see that.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for the introduction, Daniel, and welcome everyone to the webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So today we're going to talk about going headless with a modern web storefront, and more specifically how to do that with Coremedia. But before we dive into that, we thought we'd talk about why retailers are actually going headless. So to do this, I thought the best way would be to talk about a specific use case. So Debenhams is a multi-billion-dollar department store in the UK, and they were really bogged down by their legacy e-commerce system. There were a lot of complicated integrations. Everything was really tightly coupled together, so it took a long time to make any kind of e-commerce changes. So they decided to go headless and separate their web storefront from that heavy backend. And this allowed them to get product and functionality to market a lot faster. There were a few benefits that they realized from taking this headless approach. So the first was the site could actually handle more traffic. So their ability to handle concurrent web shoppers went up 38%. And scalability is really critical to ensure your website doesn't crash when traffic surges. You know, this usually happens around the holidays and Black Friday, but we're actually seeing some retailers struggle with this right now with the COVID-19 pandemic because online demand has gone up so much, especially in retail and verticals like grocery or health. They're seeing unprecedented demand online. And unfortunately, these are also the verticals that don't necessarily experience that seasonal spike, so they don't have those Black Friday playbooks to lean back on. And they end up having to resort to things like digital queues, which isn't a great experience. So scalability is definitely a key benefit of headless. Another is just a better customer experience. With a headless approach, you're not limited to any restrictive templates from your commerce system, so you can create more custom, dynamic customer experiences. And customer experience innovation has been a key driver of growth for a while, but again, in our current climate, it's really accelerated the importance of it. With physical retail locations shut down for the most part for the time being, the online experience is really only one of the only touch points that you have with your shoppers. So their perception of your brand is going to be pretty exclusively influenced by that. Then the last benefit I want to touch on was agility. So Debenhams' ability to deploy has gone up 8 times. Because the front end is separated from the back end, it means you can make changes a lot faster because you've got that leaner, faster front end. So want to show what Debenhams' deployment, this is what Debenhams' deployment pipeline looks like before going headless. So all those boxes you can see are different releases. And then this is what it looks like after going headless. So a lot more activity. They're able to test and iterate a lot faster and essentially learn what their customers want much faster. So to sum up, these are the top goals that we hear from retailers on why they're going headless. The agility to stay ahead of customer expectations, deploying customer experiences without degrading stability or quality, delivering unified commerce and content experiences without those template restrictions, unifying commerce and content data across all touchpoints, and minimizing trade-offs when you're integrating new systems. So now that we've talked about why headless, let's talk about what a storefront for headless commerce actually is. So it's essentially a lightweight web storefront that layers on top of your backend systems and uses APIs to access the backend functionality and then render that web experience. And it also includes the infrastructure to handle all your storefront operations. Now, here's why that's important. In a tightly coupled traditional monolithic approach, the storefront is built on your commerce or content system. And that backend system can handle all your storefront operations like hosting, security, scalability, etc. With a headless approach, the backend is separated from the web storefront. This is what gives you agility and flexibility. But that separation also means that it can no longer handle your storefront operations. So if you design and code your own website for a headless architecture, you're missing the infrastructure to actually run and evolve that storefront. But with a storefront for headless commerce, you get those operational pieces baked in. So you can have confidence knowing that your website, which is usually one of your biggest revenue drivers, is going to be up and running smoothly at all times. So now we've talked about what a storefront for headless commerce is and why you would need one. I'm going to pass it over to James to talk about how it would actually work. And James, let me know if you get control of the screen there.
Yeah, I've got that. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
And you should see my picture as well. So thanks so much for that, Carly. That was a great start with this. And let's continue down this conversation. So what would be in this storefront for headless if we know the kind of functionality that's going to be available through, for instance, a commerce backend system and exposed through their APIs, and the kind of functionality exposed by a headless CMS through their APIs? What would we need for a world-class storefront for a headless architecture? So this is the kind of question that we're starting to see in some of the sales cycles now, where we've been brought in because this can be something that people can overlook. Because this is typically provided in a monolithic architecture, and by that I'm talking about the traditional one-size-fits-all, your commerce engine does everything, including the storefront. Sometimes this is actually quite easy to overlook, and it's obviously a critical piece of your functionality. So for instance, this is the area that guarantees uptime. This is the area that guarantees global availability. It's the area that guarantees, or at least is an important part of the chain on performance. And obviously things such as SEO is related to this, as is things like security as well. So it's absolutely vital. Certainly this is an important link in the chain to delivering a fantastic front end. Obviously great backend systems with excellent APIs are also relevant. So what we have here in the storefront for headless is the ability to cache, particularly a lot of your assets, and cache the pages. Now, this is really, really important because if you're going to go with a headless best-in-class experience, you're often going to end up with very dynamic pages, typically pages that will do a lot of JavaScript on the actual device itself, on the client's device. And so what we need to do is to ensure that for good SEO and for fast first load, we need to cache partially rendered pages on the server. So the ability to do that and cache that inside the CDN to guarantee quick delivery, very, very fast time to first byte, very, very fast from the point of view of an SEO. So easy to for Google or similar kind of search engines to be able to map your site. These are all very, very important functionality that will have to be built in to the front end and deliver. And this is like a non-trivial aspect. In addition to that, build, run, and evolve was something that we talked about, and the ability to run and evolve and ensure that you're getting 99.95% uptime, ensure that you've got an architecture that is easy to update, that is easy to roll back if you have a bad update. These are all vital aspects that can't be overlooked. So this is an area where, for instance, custom coding, it's perhaps a bigger job than people are looking at initially. So this is really the front end onto your APIs. This is what's serving your presentation layer from those APIs, and combining in this architecture, as you can see, the best of commerce and the best of CMS. And this is just the first step really towards a true headless architecture. I'll talk about more about that later. One thing that we see when we're out in the field talking to people who are looking at going headless is kind of a concern, and it tends to be at a certain level within the company. So typically, a lot of the developers and even some of the DevOps guys already know the benefits that they're likely to receive from headless. However, we do see quite a few people, particularly merchandisers and marketers, who are used to working with a specific kind of back-end system, concerned that as we move to a headless architecture, and this is kind of really where this platform in the middle is, as you move to a headless architecture, the kind of questions I would get is, will I now need to learn how to code? If it goes headless, do I have to become a kind of a coder, or what kind of tools will I be working with to continue to do my job? And the great news is that a well-built headless architecture with a proper storefront will take advantage of the existing tools that they're already using, allowing them to continue to use that. So it's not just an integration from the point of view of the front end and the actual delivered code and the delivered experience to the customers. It's also an integration in the sense of the back office integration with the existing tool set that's already being used. And that's really, really important, because it's obvious that headless can deliver an enormous number of benefits, but it can also increase the complexity of a digital storefront quite significantly. And if you're not prepared for that and not prepared to manage that complexity, then I would even say perhaps the downsides could almost start to outweigh the benefits of headless. Headless obviously has a huge number of benefits, and if done well, it's we've already seen the results many, many times with our customers, but it is important to recognize that there is an extra level of complexity and to be prepared to manage that complexity up front. So an example here would be something like the headless Coremedia CMS. So Coremedia obviously has its content as a service, and I'm going to do a demonstration of this in a second, but this is an example here of how you would use their backend system integrating with the storefront alongside a commerce system. And the advantage of this is really the fact that you're using these side by side. Now, this is really, like I said before, the first step, because commerce obviously was the typical backend to a retail site, and CMSs over the last few years, we started to see them become equally valid in terms of, we don't just want a catalog experience, we want a full lifestyle experience, we want our brand, we want the whole kind of engaging, compelling content. But really, these are just the first two steps. The next things I'm starting to see creep up in importance are really good A/B testing, multivariate testing, and also personalization. And so really what this is these are just the first two building blocks of a collection of back-end services that a front end is going to need to unify and kind of orchestrate seamlessly to provide a single experience across all of these different backends. So this isn't a case of necessarily commerce losing something or content losing something. It's really a case of there are going to be more and more services, and we need something to sit atop all of these services and amalgamate them together to ensure that they, you can just add and remove services and replace services seamlessly. This is really important for the architectural agility of a digital retailer these days. Excuse me. So as we move to the future, what do we expect from retailers? As I say, an increase in the complexity of the sites, and as a result of that, they want better and better experiences. The customers are going to demand higher and higher experiences. You've already kind of alluded to this, Carly, but right now it's a pretty critical time in terms of being able to deliver fantastic experiences that can cope with increased traffic and can cope with continuous uptime, and really just deliver the best experience to your customers, because right now it's becoming pretty much your only interaction with your customers, so that the website really is becoming your storefront completely now. And this is really important to get the best experience for that front end. And so your apps have to be fast, they have to be available. The idea of taking it down to do an upgrade just isn't acceptable these days. The fact that you would be closing this down at a certain time, again, not something you'd expect to have. And then at the same time, one of the things that I would say is that you would expect to be able to interact with just about any data that you are getting these days. So like what I'm saying is that the idea of, in the past, siloed systems and siloed clouds, even from the same vendor, really this is something that we shouldn't be seeing in the future anymore. We should not be seeing any kind of siloed mentality. These APIs should be available to use. And really what you will be building in an architecture is a series of APIs at the back end that you can map across to the front end, and that the front end can receive and use in a very scalable manner. So this allows you to have the best interactions. What's the upshot of that? Sort of talking in jargon a bit there, but what's the upshot of that from a customer? It means that I should have a consistent experience across your site. Every communication you have with me, you should really know everything I'm doing. It means the site itself should be very, very quick. I shouldn't be having to look stuff up. You should be able to bring back all of the data I need from previous searches and previous orders and everything like that immediately. You should be able to interact and personalize and deliver fantastic content that's also optimized for my device. You should be able to update that content frequently. Basically, it's the modern experience and the demands are higher than ever. And really, if you're building this digital storefront, you need to be able to cope with that system, and you need to make it as easy as possible to do this and make sure that your existing internal team are working with the tools that they already like and are able to continue to deliver a great experience. And so really, it should be almost seamless from your back end. This shouldn't feel like a lot more work. So right now, I'm just going to quickly step to one side here and demo an existing system here. So this is a demo site provided with 2 backend systems and Mobify's Storefront for Headless. It's a leading global sports brand. I think it's pretty obvious which one it is. And so what we've got here is a great example of a storefront combining information from 2 different backends. So I'm going to quickly skip over the commerce one because we're going to focus on content today, but just briefly to let you know here, this is a homepage, obviously. The navigation side of this is going to be run from Salesforce. I'm just going to really, really quickly jump into that. And Salesforce has now started to get very, very heavily into Headless. And if we go into this and look here, we can see that they have a series of APIs that they're now making available. Excuse me, for the purpose of this demo, we're basically focusing on their shopper APIs, and we're using that for things such as even the navigation menu at the top here. So if I just jump into this and take a look at this and go through this, you can see that all of this product, this is product that your merchandiser would bring in from a backend system such as Salesforce. But let's really focus today a little bit more on this front end page. So you're pulling in a lot of content. This is a perfect area that a marketer is going to want full control over, or as much as possible. And I think another one of the questions that I often get asked is, once the site is live, am I going to have to go back to make, if I want to make changes to the site, do I have to go back to IT? And this is a kind of big no-no, because marketing doesn't want to lose that autonomy. Not that they don't get on great with the IT guys, just that the IT people typically in retail companies have a huge backlog. And if you want to be, agile and move forward quickly, let's say somebody, Beyonce wears one of your products, you want to get that out on the site straight away. You don't want to have to go back and, ask other people to do it. So this is a great aspect of this. So this page here, what we're seeing is this hero banner, and some of these pieces of content are actually going to be driven directly from Coremedia. So this is a headless example, and we're still using the same tools to deal with this. So if I go into Coremedia Studio here, I actually have a view onto this. Now, I'm not the biggest Coremedia expert here, but what I'm going to show you, this is a preview of the site, and you can see you can swap to the different device types, including desktop. The site itself, the site itself is actually responsive, and so that's going to deal with the different sizes. You can see that the menu turns into a hamburger menu as you drop down in size, and this is from a responsive single code base. So we can kind of go in there and take a look at it. What I'm going to do right now is just change the call to action, I think, because I wrote that last one, and I think buy this now is maybe a little bit unsettled. So what I'm going to do is I think I'll kind of go into there and take a look at the header here, and I can open this up and I can change that, and let's have something a little bit more subtle. Okay, so what's this called? Speed form now in stock. So that's something I can do right there. You can see that we get the immediate update. So this is something, if you weren't building with Headless, this was something you'd be expecting to use all the time already. Now, one of the other things I can do as well is if I kind of close this, we see I'm going to apply this, and we can see that we're ready to publish. And what I'm also going to do here is you can see that we have 2 different images here, and we've got the ladies first and then the chap afterwards. In the mobile version, you can see it's kind of in this style. What we're going to do is I'm just going to swap those around. And again, don't need to code. I'm just going to put the guy at the top here and just change that. And now I've got 2 changes that are pending, and I'm just going to go ahead and publish that. Okay, and then if I just go back here and just refresh the site, you'll see the guide moves to the left, and buy this now has been replaced with Speedform now in stock. So this is really just showing you that if you're concerned, if you're in marketing or you're working with Coremedia or similar kind of headless CMS, headless commerce, the whole point of this really is that Coremedia is going to continue to work in a headless environment. You're not going to have to change your processes. You still get the best of all these different worlds. And that's really the big advantage here. You get the benefits of headless without losing any of the functionality you're used to. So let me quickly just step through the last parts of this then just to explain what this was. So firstly, this is an Under Armour, obviously, branded progressive web app. And so you can see what you're getting there is the commerce APIs that have been exposed from Salesforce, that Salesforce is now functioning on, and the GraphQL API from Coremedia's content as a service. And that's what we're consuming and displaying inside this proof of concept. Excuse me. So another aspect of this is a server-side rendered progressive web app. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about progressive web apps. You'll have definitely seen them if you're out in the market right now. They're basically websites originally designed for mobile that give a kind of app-like experience that focus very heavily on things such as high frame rate, very intuitive interfaces, and they tend to get measured by Lighthouse performance like this. And this is an example of a straight out of the box Mobify scaffold. And this is the Lighthouse on the demo we've just been running right now. So one of the aspects of that is that those heavy JavaScript heavy sites like that run a lot of JavaScript on the client device, they can be a little bit slow to render on the first render. So we have server-side rendering for that, as I mentioned earlier, which also boosts SEO and pulls that in. And we've also seen in that demo that there were placeholders in place where the Einstein from APIs from Salesforce would have come in. But from the CMS point of view, which is really important here, the great point really here is that the non-technical Coremedia users, the people who are skilled in Coremedia but aren't necessarily programmers, website experts, they can continue to work the way that they want to. And not only are they changing content, able to update content, they're actually able to change layouts and so on the fly from their system without needing to go through IT. They can put it through a typical approvals process with marketing, and they basically have the autonomy that they want. And that stretches out to be able to design new pages, design full layouts and so on, and you can hand over certain screens to marketing. You can do what you want in that. But I think the great aspect of this is that they control the content that they want to, and they're still pulling content from the commerce engine where they need to. So you still get the great catalog style experience as well. Another aspect of it from a performance point of view is that thanks to Coremedia's excellent content as a service GraphQL API, we're able to do this with a single GraphQL API call. So this is a really big advantage. One of the things you're starting to see is that as more and more APIs are exposed from the back end, making them performant is actually quite a serious science these days. And so, if you're calling 20, tens of kind of API calls to build your page up, you're going to be in a bad situation, and people are typically starting to build extra layers in. So with this GraphQL API on top of content as a service, you get a fantastic performant API from a single call, which is really, it makes a huge difference in terms of performance of your site. And then from the commerce point of view, as we've already said, you're integrated. What we're seeing here, I think the important thing from this point of view is that other products, big companies like Salesforce really see the value of headless. They're investing heavily in these APIs. And this is great because even if you have a fantastic CMS with a headless CMS, you need your commerce system to be headless as well to really build this architecture up. So that's kind of a really important aspect to this. And I think that brings everything to an end from my point of view. So just want to hand this back across to Daniel. One last thing I guess I'd like to say is that obviously you can get our guide to storefronts from our website here, and I believe we'll be sending that through in the follow-up email after this.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Carly. Thank you, James. It was a very cool session. I must say, it was very interesting to see how Mobify enhances the delivery of content management within Coremedia in a headless scenario. And I really like you saying a couple of buzzwords like agility, also no code. I see you smiling. Of course, all the business users are normally concerned also about how I can avoid this, like just to change something. And especially in these headless scenarios at the beginning, everybody was kind of with a question mark and struggling. But yeah, like really, really well detailed and really well explained. Also the part of Headless, how it works, and yeah, the benefits from Headless, as I said, you bring them all together without losing the functionality of a content management system such as Coremedia. So great. Let's check. I want to, like, we're going down to the part of questions. I cannot have access to the questions. Let me.
Oh, I can see
me. Yeah. Okay, I have a question first of all. I think, well, I will let you decide who would you like to answer, who would like to answer first. I have, are any of your customers seeing a benefit from Headless during this climate of increased digital demand?
Yeah, I can take that one. So this scalability is definitely one of the benefits our customers are experiencing right now. So some of our customers have seen traffic double since the onset of the pandemic, but their page load speeds, both their first page load and subsequent page load speeds, have remained consistent, in some cases even gotten better. So that increase in traffic hasn't hindered their performance at all, which has been really key for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And I have a question regarding demands. How long did it take demands to go headless? Do you have this information?
Yeah, so it's a slightly difficult question in the sense that we took things the long way around a little bit with Debenhams, and I think that I admit that as well. The initial build for Debenhams was actually mobile only, but I mean, one of the big aspects of this was the sheer speed of that. So the initial build for Debenhams was it was, I believe, 4.5 or 5 months end to end, but that includes, you know, commercials and so on. It was about 3 to 3.5 months of development work. So that was just getting their initial build live on their mobile site. So that was their initial driver. From there, Debenhams have then moved across to the full storefront for Headless. I would say that in the meantime, that's maybe been a couple of more, maybe 3-month projects. But I think ultimately, if you were to say, what would you get? How long would it take to get Debenhams live if they were starting and just went straight to storefront right now? It would probably be around 6 months. Their back end isn't necessarily set up for this, so there was an aspect to that, and I think there would be in agreement around that. So there are certainly quicker ways to build than that if you had, for instance, the kind of APIs that you've already got available. But I think with Debenhams, one of the aspects that's important to recognize is this was the first step in a transformational journey, and this might be interesting for people kind of listening to this right now, is that they felt that they were going to have to do this incredibly expensive transformational cost up front, but actually what they found was they could fit Mobify on top of their old system, get some of the first benefits of the agility, as all the benefits really that Carly was already showing, the agility, the increased speed, the scalability. This is the first year they didn't, for instance, do a code freeze through Black Friday, through peak trading. All of those are benefits. And then in the background, slowly start to migrate to a newer system, migrate to a kind of a microservices approach. So if the people out there right now who think, I'd love to do this, but I'm actually on a really old system, I'd need to change that first. Not necessarily the case. You can actually sit this on top of the old system and then start to migrate afterwards and get the benefits now. And then, while you're doing that, so you get the benefits kind of really early on into a transformational project.
Interesting. And I think there's a follow-up question to that one, because it is talking about blueprints of the Coremedia modules. So it's asking like if they are used in this case, and if will Mobify. Sorry, it jumped. Just a second. I have to look for the question again. Yeah, will Mobify offer me or be offering a set of modules I can use in the front end?
I think I got that question. Yeah, so there's 2 ways that we may do this right now. Yeah. So yeah, typically it would be either as a reference architecture or as you say, like a direct module or connector. But yeah, one way or another, we would have an accelerated starting point that would have done some of the boilerplate. One of the things with CMS integration is that thanks to things like custom objects, quite a lot of people have quite specific bespoke aspects to their CMS integration. But yeah, certainly we would give you an accelerator that would already have done a lot of that work for you. So it's either a reference architecture or a module connector or something.
Mm-hmm. And concerning preview, do you recommend Storefront as preview or implement preview of Coremedia Studio?
That was a sharp-eyed question. Yeah, we do. Yes, we do, and we didn't for that demo. So I'm sorry whoever got that. Yeah, yeah. Normally we'd do that. Yeah, we hadn't done it for that demo, but yes, normally we would recommend that you implemented preview for that. And there's a reason for that. So for instance, if you were paying attention on the preview, you couldn't see, for instance, the Salesforce aspects in there. Whereas if you had implemented the Storefront in your preview, you would have actually been able to pull in the Salesforce elements. And again, as I say, as more and more things come into play, A/B testing, personalization, you want to be able to see that as part of your preview.
Good. We have a little bit more time and several questions to go through. How does a headless architecture compare to using a CMS for my storefront?
Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's a really good question. Do you want me to take that one, Carly?
Sure, go for it.
So, yeah, so one of the things that people often see when the two of these get together is that either my CMS sits underneath my commerce system or my CMS sits on top of it. And these have been two kind of fairly common architectures as CMS has grown in importance in digital retail. So with what we're doing right now, it's slightly different in the sense that actually both of them are speaking directly to the storefront layer. So there is a slight difference in the sense that what we've typically heard in the past is that when people are running one system through another, they do lose some functionality. And so, a lot of our feedback is based on what we're hearing from prospects and customers and so on. And so, I've heard people say, I bought this system and I can't use half of it because I'm having to run it through the other system and so on. So firstly, there's no lack of functionality in that sense. There may be some level of connectivity. Typically, your CMS may be pulling through some of the product data and so on. But I think the important thing to recognize is that these are the first two building blocks. So as this gets bigger and bigger, this is the right architecture for getting more and more of these services, like I say, A/B testing, personalization. Again, two typical things. So I think one of the big things, this is a forward-looking architecture, whereas the other ones have a couple of disadvantages. Not least, there's a tight sort of tying between the commerce and the CMS system. So that's not really in the spirit of a kind of headless architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me see. I have question and a comment directly. Well, there is the question is, how do you handle that the APIs of Salesforce or Coremedia respond fast? So that is because, well, the comment is there that for some further project, I had often the problem that their APIs are not really fast.
Yep. Do you want me to take that again? I'm sorry about this, Carly.
No, I think you've got better insight into the APIs from the solution architect standpoint.
Okay, thanks. So there's two aspects of that. One is that I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think like one aspect that Salesforce has done, for instance, right now is it's really optimized its APIs. So this may be a problem of the past anyway. So as it goes to headless, it's really making an effort to optimize that. Sitting on top of this as a storefront, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's two aspects to this. Firstly, if your site runs slowly as a storefront, you're typically the first people that the retailer is going to come and talk to and say, hey, our site's running slowly, it's probably your fault. So one of the things that we tend to do is we actually proxy the APIs. And this is just speaking from our storefront, but if Mobify was your storefront and you have whatever, mydigitalshop.com, that's going to point to our CDN and it's going to go through our middle tier, and that's going to have proxies in there. And that has two benefits. One is that there's a performance benefit because we can reuse HTTP connections. And secondly, this allows us to analyze the length of time that API calls take. And so one of the things that we're doing as we run along with this is that we are able to see if anything's, we've seen this in the past where sometimes some update happens and a commerce system starts running slowly, an API runs slowly. We're able to track this and flag this up with the customer. So if it's a backend configuration thing, we can help flag that up. Secondly, we have multiple layers of caching. So I mentioned that we have a CDN cache, which is true, but we also have an application cache. So that's an intelligent, programmatic, typical kind of database style cache running on our middle tier. So if we do have slow running APIs at the back, we're able to cache those results. So we have a lot of ways of caching to mitigate these slow things, monitoring to be able to see if these things are happening. And as I say, the companies themselves are also making a real effort to improve the speed of it. Another aspect is you can install, if you want to, a GraphQL server on our middle tier, and you can effectively use our middle tier as a backend for front end kind of approach. For anyone who's listening and doesn't know what that means, most of the APIs at the back end are typically driven by service processes. And so the shape of it is, get me everything on this, get me everything on that. So for instance, get me everything in my shopping cart, get me the details of this product and so on. But if you have to run, say, 7 or 8 different API calls to build, say, a product page, this could be very inefficient. So what you do is you build a back-end API that is optimized so you have like 1 or 2 calls perhaps for that front end. And it deals with the kind of messiness of the back end and includes caching, slow-moving APIs and so on. So you just have like 1 API call, PDP, whatever, brings back all of the data for that page. So yeah, multiple ways of running around that. But yeah, this is obviously something that our customers treat very, very seriously. Performance is a huge deal.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up question then, on which front-end code base Movify is coded, like mentioned here is React.js. So
yeah, so it's a React front-end code base. Have we ever used anything else, James, or is it always React?
No, from PWA, it's always been React, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think, Carly, this is for you. Okay, well, let me see. Oh no, it was for Coremedia, and this, I'm sorry, I read it wrong. It says to Coremedia, can you share a link or a document regarding licenses and pricing model? Well, this is I would go for this question. Yeah, for sure, we can, like, the best way is to approach, well, me, a part of the product management team, or also one of our sales representatives, of course, or account management if you're already part of the Coremedia family. And yeah, we will be happy also to share the information from Movify's side, because also this is like a partnership, and Movify, it's also, I think, willing to share their pricing model and licensing model, right, Carly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think I have a last question. We have a couple more minutes. How would you describe the switch from a typical setup on-premise, let's say, to a headless setup on cloud? Is it difficult? Is it easy? It's yeah.
Yeah, I can jump on that one. So as James kind of alluded to before when he was talking about Debenhams, a storefront for headless commerce could actually help facilitate that transition from an on-premise solution to a cloud solution. So you could layer a storefront on top of your existing on-premise e-commerce solution, and that can give you some more agility, and it separates the two so that once you're ready to actually swap that back end for a cloud system, you can do so without impacting the customer experience and having to start it from scratch again.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just add to that for 1 second, please?
Sure.
One of the things that we did, so Carly's absolutely right. So thank you for that. One thing I just wanted to quickly add from the solution architecture point of view, this is definitely an area of concern. The analogy, sorry, I would make is that if you get a company in to do a large extension on your house or a large piece of building work, or then decide to hire all the individual builders and tradesmen and buy all the product yourself, it's kind of a different world. And going from a monolith to headless feels a bit like that. So one of the things that we'll do with our prospects and customers is we'll build up a solution architecture document. And what that does is really ask them why they're going headless, takes a kind of stock of their current architecture, explains the proposed headless architecture, including all the other bits that you will need, so CMS, all the different things, all the integrations of existing third-party tools, how are they going to look in a headless thing? And then really we sort of help outline the roadmap from A to B. And that includes, working with them to say, do we phase this? Does this go out? Do we have something after 6 months, then something after 12? How you want to do this? So because it's such a a personalized, unique experience for each individual customer, we think that really helps clear up any of those kind of concerns, because yeah, as you know, this kind of question is a very common question we see.
Mm-hmm. And I would say the last question, I think we have time for a last question. Why isn't everybody going headless?
Good question. I mean, like we've talked about, you do need to set up your organization and everything to go headless. It's a combination of people, processes, and technology. So it is a more complex setup, and you get a lot of benefits with that. But I think we're going to see a lot more retailers going headless. We've seen just in the last year, it's really become something that people have actually started executing on. It's been something that's been talked about for a few years now, but we've really seen the adoption increase significantly in the last year.
Well, okay. I think these are all the questions for now. In case you have any other questions, we have our contacts, as you can see already in the presentation. You can contact us also from on the part of Coremedia. And yeah, to coming to the end, I also would like to invite you to the next sessions that we will have for with different partners. If you want to check it out, please go to, visit our website, coremedia.com. There you will see the list of different webinars that we will have. Last but not least, we would like to invite you to fill the survey for feedback. It is also very important for us to know what you think about these sessions. So feel free to put all your feedback. It will be very welcome. So, Carly, James, thank you very much for your time today. It extended a bit longer than we than we planned, and well, it's very good to see all the questions and thoughts about everybody. And thank you everybody for being here, taking your time, and of course, we will send you the information where to get the access to the recording. Well, again, thank you very much, and stay safe. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Bye.